How unusual.
Good morning. I call this meeting to order of the Montana Board of Public Education. Today is Friday, May 12th, and we are here at the School for the Deaf and Blind in Great Falls. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning, and we will be led this morning in the Pledge of Allegiance by a group of students from MSDB, the Flying Hooves. And after we do some of our preliminary pieces here, give your teacher a chance to introduce the group. So at this point, let's join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Chris, would you like to do roll call?
Madeline Quinlan,
Here.
Susie Hedlund,
Here.
Ann Keith, Ron Slinger,
Here.
Tim Tharp,
Here.
Jane Hammond,
Here.
Renee Rasmussen,
Here.
Charles Fox,
Here.
Superintendent Arneson's office, here, Commissioner Christian's office, Governor Jean Forte's office.
Here.
Welcome, everyone. Next, I'd like to read the statement of public participation. The Board of Public Education encourages the public to participate in board discussions. Persons who wish to participate should sign the public comment signing sheet and identify themselves to the board chair or executive director prior to the board's consideration of the matter in which the persons are concerned. Anyone wishing to participate in board discussions will be recognized by the chairperson in keeping with normal board parliamentary procedure. We discourage public comment on personnel matters and ask that you discuss these issues in private with the board chair. The Montana Board of Public Education is a professional development unit provider. Attending a Board of Public Education meeting may qualify you to receive professional development units. Please complete the necessary information on the sign-in sheet if you are applying for professional development units. I think we'll start by welcoming our group of students, and then we'll introduce the audience after that. I'd like to introduce Dr. Justine Clifford, who is the leader of the MSDB Flying Hooves.
Good morning, thank you. So these are the Flying Hooves, and we're a drama group here at MSDB. We do ASL and plays, things like that. So we're really excited to be here. Did you want us to just keep going with our performance?
Yes, please.
I'll turn it over to the students. Hello, and welcome to our pirate ship. Sailing the boat, and I looked around and I pulled out my map. Oh, and I looked at an island over there. So we landed the boat by the island. I took out my map again and it said 5 paces this direction. All right, so I flipped, there's a tree on the rock. That's not what I want. So I look at my map again. 15 paces to the east. All right. So I walk to the east. And I see another tree. Oh, it looks like there's something shiny there. So I dig a big hole. Oh, so big, really deep hole. And then I open up, there's a chest with gold. All right. So I pull out the chest and take it on my pirate ship. I'm sailing in my pirate ship. I look out and I notice something swimming in the water. Wait, what that might be? Is it a fish? Or maybe it's a mermaid? All right, so I'm gonna get my net. Maybe I can catch the mermaid. Oh, the mermaid splashes me. What the heck? So I throw the net. Oh, I missed her. I try, grab the net again, and throw it again. And I've caught her. Thank you very much. Sailing in my pirate ship, I noticed another ship. So the ships come alongside each other, and we're ready to fight them. We come up over in a rope and fight, and my pirate ship won, and we take off into the distance. Land ho! All right. Hello, I'm David. And I'm a ninth grader. Hello, I am Avia. And I'm also a ninth grader. Hello, welcome. My name is Madison. And this is my sign name, and I'm in 8th grade. Hello, my name is Angelina. And this is my sign name, and I am a sophomore. Hello, my name is Lily, and my sign name is this, and I'm in 7th grade. Hello, my name is Joshua. I'm in 11th grade.
Hello, my name is Vanessa. Hey, my name is Marisha and I'm in 3rd grade.
Thank you very much.
This is the past. Yeah.
Hey, at this point, we'd like to welcome any visitors in the audience who'd like to say hello.
Good morning, I'm Monica Curtis, president of MSE. Happy to see you all again and thanks for your work.
Good morning, Rob Watson, Executive Director, School Administrators Montana. Thank you for being with us.
Sarah Russell, our grade teacher, North Star, thank you for all you do.
James Russell, Superintendent, Northwest Schools. Thank you very much for all.
Welcome back for another day.
Yeah.
Morning, Julie Merville, Chief Operating Officer at the Montana Office of Public Inspection.
Morning, Cheryl.
Good to see all of you today. Pleasure to be with you.
I see we have Dylan online. Good morning, Dylan. Anybody else in the audience?
Superintendent Barron, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Laurie Barron, the superintendent of the Evergreen School District in Kalispell.
Good morning. Okay, so we'll move back to our accreditation items this morning. I believe we'll just move to item 16. I know we have some business to come back to from yesterday, but why don't we? Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's go back to page 159 of the agenda. It was item 13 that we were working on related to the accreditation process and the schedule for the year ahead. And I'll turn this part of the agenda over to board member Tharp, and I'm sure we have some input from some audience.
All right, thank you. Yes, as we discussed yesterday, the process after our discussion and input from various folks, we decided to table it till today, sleep on it, come up with some other ideas, and the superintendent's office is present today as well with some further ideas as to what we want to do. We kind of talked about a slower rollout and different ideas. Yesterday, we talked about hold harmless sort of ways to kind of freeze the accreditation status now. So I guess Dr. Cheryl Allen, do you have any ideas, suggestions, revised proposed timelines from the OPI?
Thank you, Dr. Tharp. Indeed, I think we have clarity for you on the timeline as well as some additional slide. Dr. Merkel is here as well with some significant data points to consider. So let me hand that your direction. Julie, was there enough for all of you? Great, I'm glad I didn't miss Kevin on that.
You should give it to them now going to us.
Yeah.
I'm trying to redeem myself.
So if we look at the timeline on the first page, we just laid it out a little bit differently for you to be able to see the flow starting with May, which is right now at this time, which is on your action to look at this item as an action item for this time to hit the July 1 deadlines that have already been approved by the Board of Public Ed for implementation. Some of the questions you asked about, so you'll see some of the process flows that are in here. Some of the questions that I was able to listen to yesterday is the concern is the process moving too quickly, I think was one of those. So if you look at the page that's timeline, behind that, Dr. Merkel and I worked to actually lay out what that looks like. So the 23-24 school year accreditation is already set. That was done in the 22-23 school year with the old rules. Now in the 23-24 will be the first time school districts are actually working with the new rules that the board approved. The 23-24 school year, the work from that sets the 24-25 accreditation standards. And I want to really have you think about, it used to be a fall to December process, and then we work on teams. It's now moving to a spring because of alignment. The annual data collection, which Dr. Merkel will give you some additional insights into what's happening with that, for it is in the window that used to be the teams window or the accreditation window. So that's still in that window. You will see that the board's going to look at accreditation in November. The reason for November now is because the variance to standards is in October. So districts are now seeking variance to standards because they have a better picture. That happens in October, which means we have to have it in front of the board at your November meeting so that they know that as they're continuing their cycle for the spring. So we've really been thinking about all the pieces that are approved by the board and how they flow together. So when you look at the timeline, what happens in the 23-24 school year, you've got assurance standards that districts will meet. And you've got what we talked about are those that are in progress. And so the integrated strategic action plan, the family engagement plan, these are district level responsibilities. The graduate profile, you're not going to see that in finalization for 3 years. So it's about the progress, and we've been talking as a team of how do you measure progress. And that's a piece that says we can get to assurance standards by measuring the progress of districts. So districts that are working get away from deviations and get to regular accreditation for a variety of reasons will have the opportunity for progress. We also talked about changing cycles from every year to 3 year. Annual data collection happens every year because that has all kinds of fiscal implications with it. Accreditation doesn't have to happen every 3 years. So if you're a district that's making the progress and in those preliminaries, looks like you'd be at regular accreditation, it allows us to now start blowing out the 3-year cycles. If you need more support and time, then you'll still be in the year to year until you get there. So that's really what we're trying to have you look at carefully, is that this isn't moving too fast. It's very intentional, it's very deliberate in its approach. Dr. Merkel and team shared with you the document for accreditation document, the guidance document. That's the OPI's responsibility, so you could see what our thinking is. The board doesn't approve that document, and that's already in rule. So again, Dr. Merkel's team has shared that in webinar groups. She has shared that with the board. That is not the piece for the board to get wrapped up around. It is open, there's stakeholder feedback that will be continual and ongoing with that. So if you look through it, it's really trying to get to giving the graphic representation, because we can all get caught in reading and saying, what does this mean? So hopefully this helps. If you don't mind, Chair Quinlan, I'd like to, and Sheriff Clark, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Merkel to give you a couple of key data points, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, and board members. It's good to see each of you. For the record, Julie Mergel, MURGEL, Chief Operating Officer at the Montana Office of Public Instruction. So I wanted to just kind of again come forward to say, what are we asking of the board at this time? And that is related to 1055-6012, where the superintendent and the board need to set the schedule and the process for the accreditation for the upcoming school year. And so we outlined that in 3 steps. Step 1, for assurance standards, looking at a 4-point rubric added to the student performance standards. Step 2, to get an overall. And so I wanted to really walk through a couple of really concrete examples, because I heard from you yesterday, Dr. Tharp was mentioning 9 of his schools. We heard from Renee the perspective of the rural and really wanting to hold that piece. And so I wanted to actually walk through some of the rubrics and the guidance documents to paint a picture of what does that really mean for a potential school. So if you go to your board packet, and I know you were on page 165, but the page I'm looking at it's number 3 in the process. It has the squares at the top, the plus, equals, and then the categories below.
162.
162. Thank you, Dr. Tharp. And so it talks about, right, taking those 2 steps together, calculating the assurance standard, coming up with all the points, combining that with the students' performance standards to get the overall. And so what you'll notice is this is the process that we've had that aligns with rule. So you'll see regular in assurance standards with regular student performance standards equals the final accreditation status of regular. What you'll notice for deficiency is if you are deficient in either the assurance standards or the student performance standards, that's going to put you in deficient overall. So when we go to the rubrics and we start thinking about, for example, what would it mean to become, if you will, so if we're on 162, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I'm on 170, I believe, and it has a assurance rubric at the bottom. So I want us to walk through an example to show how as a school would you become deficient. Say I'm an elementary school, what would that mean? Or what would it take for me to be a regular? So I want to look at those 2 examples and I want to compare it to what we currently do to what is proposed in this process on a concrete example. So if you'll notice on this assurance rubric, we're going to take those rubrics, add them all up to a total. When you take all those 4 points to 3 to 2 to 1, you'll notice for an elementary school to be deficient, you would need to score overall between 1 to 10 points. So what does that mean? So if we look at the rubric starting on 171 and we start going through it, we're looking at rubric A. the integrated strategic action plan. Now, this is a district level item. If I was deficient, that would mean I have no evidence, my district has no evidence that they've done a CNA. So they didn't do that, basically. Next page, the integrated strategic action plan on defining a graduate profile. No progress, no evidence that anything has happened at the district level. That puts me at a 1.
Dr. Merle, can I interrupt you for a
Yes.
second? I'm not sure our pages are lining up with what you're describing to us. So we all have the document in front of us, and there is a section that starts with evaluating assurance, and it goes on to talk about school leadership. Are you before or after?
After that. So the page I'm on, thank you, Madam Chair. It starts with, at the top, it says like the components of the ISEP, and it has the rubrics here. And it starts with A, integrated strategic action.
169.
159, okay, 169. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a second to get there.
I was following.
Thank you. Okay, so again, I just want to talk about for an elementary school, how would you become deficient using these rubrics, right? So you get 1 point if your district didn't have any evidence of doing a CNA at all. You get 1 point if you have no evidence to support that you've made any progress on your graduate profile at the district level. That's 2. Next one, we're looking at Board of Trustees. And this is all about, do you have the policies and can assure us that you have these policies in place? So this is a checklist. Yes, I have a policy for mentorship. Yes, I have a policy for safety. Yes, I have a policy for prevention. What are those policies that are listed there that we're required to? That's a checklist, an assurance. So you would have 1 point if you did not have any of assurances or can provide a checklist to say we have those policies in place. That's 1 point. That gives us 3. We go to the next one on B, assignment and licensure of staff. So we're thinking about, we have a licensed, non-licensed teacher. If you have one non-licensed teacher, that automatically puts you in deficient. Okay, so that's going to put you over in the 1. I want you to notice when you meet with our specialist later, Ellery, and you look at the data, we have 200 schools that were deficient overall because of this particular piece right here, by having 1, 2, and you'll see the numbers by school, and you'll see the numbers by number of teachers when she shares that data with you, but it's 200, okay? And then there's misassigned. So they would have a 1 here if they have 1 teacher who's not licensed. Okay, that puts me at 4. If you have not met the teacher load on C, you have 3 or more overloads without the appropriate assigned resources. This comes strictly from the rule. There's no gray here, right? It has it directly what that is. Either you are appropriately assigned or not if you don't fall within that. That data will be pulled from TMT, the Teach Montana, on licensure, and it'll be pulled from Infinite Campus because we can see your master schedule and see if you're assigned to the appropriate class and what that class size is. We'll actually be able to see it for the whole year, by the way. So imagine now, right? We're talking about so far, my district hasn't done the CNA, I haven't done the graduate profile, we haven't done the assurances of our policy, we have 1 or more unlicensed teacher, we have 3 or more overclass loads, we're at 5. We go to the next page, D, increasing effectiveness of professional development. The district has no professional development plan. We're at a 5. We have not followed the professional development that includes the 3 pupil instructional days that you're supposed to have. That puts you at 1. We're at 6. Your district didn't do on F a family and community engagement. You have planned. You don't have anything at the district level. That puts you at 7. We go into academic requirements. You don't meet the basic requirements at the elementary. 8. You don't have on H the curriculum. 9. You haven't implemented Indian education for all components that now has been embedded into intentionally, by the way, right, of really holding school districts accountable for that. You don't have that. That puts you there. That's how you would become deficient in the assurance standards. To not be deficient, you'd have to have 11 points to be advice. That could be something as the district had a CNA, that puts you 1 point over. That could be that you had the assurance checklist, that puts you at 12. So what would it mean to get regular, right? What would it mean to get those 31 points? How would you be able to do that? Your district would have evidence of their CNA started, their graduate profile. Right? You could still, even if I was to go through this example, you could still end up deficient because you don't have a licensed teacher appropriately assigned or don't meet the class loads, and you still could be regular in the assurance standards. So my question for you is, when you look at this and you made the comment, I want to hold the schools harmless. When you look at the data, and it's in your packet, and Ellery will be going over it in the next presentation, we're going to be holding schools, 300 of them, in deficiency if we hold and maintain that status. We've been thoughtful to think about how do we incentivize and how do we help move towards innovation for our school districts in a meaningful way, to start planning for the learner-centered system and moving towards that graduate profile. We've tried to do it in a way that will hold them harmless around that student performance standards, to say, while we are innovating in our assessment system and setting those scores, how do we allow school districts to demonstrate to us a use of an assessment for math and ELA that they all already have in place, and to be able to demonstrate to us that they have that tool, they're using that tool, and it's leading to some positive outcomes. So my point to you guys is, when we look at this, and I like the idea of the percentages that were brought up, we're willing to go through this summer, tackle and get really crystal clear and have those bodies of evidence to say, what would this look like? So when we're talking about Infinite Campus, you guys, we already do that upload. We've been out there with our AIM team. We've increased the number of people in our AIM team for that annual data collection. They've already been at Masville working with our clerks. And the response is, this is a lot less work for our schools because it's not a duplication of effort. Many of the redundancy. So we're shifting the time to say, let's start moving over here. So I believe, as the example that I've just said to you, maintaining the current status has the potential to actually harm our schools more than moving forward with the new process that incentivizes schools to focus on a learner-centered system in the graduate profile. The new process is reasonable, appropriate for first-year implementation. It's meaningful. It's aligned to improvement efforts that are small tweaks rather than big changes. And it spurs action rather than standing still. And so when we look at this, we're looking forward to help create enough urgency to move towards an outcome-based system and thinking about our schools in that process. So, Chair Quinlan.
Thank you. I think yesterday the concept of hold harmless came up because we didn't understand as a board how a process that you're now saying, or you're clarifying, is a 3-year process for getting all these pieces in place. We didn't understand what that first year was going to look like. And it still appears that schools will score lower in the first year than they will by year 3, because they're working on the building blocks to get the whole piece together for the integrated strategic action plan. So what I'm still unclear, well, 2 things I'm unclear about is really, what does a board motion look like? Because what we had in our board packet just shows like it's all in place in the first year of the piece. And I realize now we're not talking about that. So what will a board motion look like? And also, Is it your expectation that in the first year, a whole lot of schools are gonna show up as deficient or perhaps under advice because they're in the preliminary stages of the process, of a 3-year process?
So Chair Quinlan, I actually think they're gonna score higher. Because we're talking about, do you have evidence that you have implemented a CNA, a comprehensive needs assessment? That's not something new. That's a requirement for federal programming and has been for a long time. And we have a tool. We actually just got done enhancing that tool. It'll be ready to go so that it's integrated, it's more user friendly. There's lots of different needs assessments that can be used out there. So we're not asking them to do something that they haven't done before at the district level that's already in place. So they just have to show evidence that they have been doing it and they've included stakeholders in it. I don't think that that will mean that they score lower. They're gonna score lower if they don't have one at all. So year one, we're asking them to use one, do their stakeholder engagement, and then start to begin this process around an improvement plan, which is also not something new. They've been doing that for years through the CSIP, which is also a federal requirement. So I would say, I think that they're actually gonna score higher, especially compared to where they're scored this year. Because on the current process, we see more schools that are deficient than we've ever seen. And so we're actually looking at it in a way to say, how do we mitigate some of that in a way that incentivizes them to start to make that movement, not punish them, if you will, for making that movement forward because it doesn't quite reach that bar. We're saying for this first year, we're expecting some of the rubrics, not all of them, for those assurance standards, if you will, because school climate's not in here. The 800s aren't in here. Not all of the 900s are in here. Not all of the thousands are in here, which we've never measured. So we're trying to be thoughtful on how to get there and how to move there. And it's not just a checklist of something that we do. We have to do annual data collection, right? That's not because of accreditation. That's because of all those other financial things and because it's statute. So I believe that they're actually going to score better than what we see right now on the current system.
Remember Rasmussen?
Thank you. I've got one comment and 2 questions, I think. So this is much clearer than I understood yesterday, way. So I just went through here and decided that I was a school that didn't do a lot and was, had a lot of changeover in leadership, and so things hadn't progressed. There's some things that you could score a 4 on. You've got all the things that are required for high school graduation. There's a few things like that. So I went through here and gave 2s on almost everything and a couple of places like that for us. And I could come up with most schools on this side being in minor deviation at the worst. So I didn't understand how that was going to work yesterday. So that's my comment. Questions 2. What if can you stay in a limited evidence for 2 years in a row because you're working? You can and not be punished for that. Okay, number 3, whatever I am. How it says a lot of times this says well, more than 3, but item number 3. It says upload. I'm unclear about where that upload. In a couple of places it says you can hyperlink, and not everybody has all of their things online, their policies online. So what is your process? I mean, I'm concerned, do we put it all together in a stack and put it in an envelope and ship it to you? Or where is this uploaded? How does that process work? What do you see as that process?
So we are working on a new system for the accreditation that's going to be with Teach Montana in the same system, like additional screens.
Okay,
You'll be able to upload documents just as you can with your teacher licensure. Here's my transcript, upload the document.
okay,
So districts already have access to that system. That data will be right there. They'll be able to log into the system, the districts will, to be able to submit this information.
Okay.
If we were in a situation where there could be, right? We've had this happen, Board Member Rasmussen, with some of our schools with their ESSER plans. They didn't even have a web page to be able to post it. So they actually, right, sent it to us. We posted it on our webpage for them so that it was located somewhere. We reached out to county superintendents and said, can you put this on your county webpage? So if we have a school district that is in some kind of situation where they really can't upload into that platform, then we will, work with them. We want to be available in providing, as Crystal Andrews said yesterday, office hours throughout this entire process as we beginning to go through this so that we can see it. I'm so excited because this thing is even going to have a place to do applications for the various standards, and it's right in there and you don't have to email it. And it'll be in one place for them to really see all of that information so that data will be integrated over there. And so, I agree with you that we have to be thoughtful around what does it mean, because it will look much different than Teams, right? Because we're not gonna, that's retired, and we're not gonna be having school districts go in and put stuff into Teams. We're gonna pull it and migrate it over from TMT. We're gonna migrate it over from Infinite Campus. They won't have to do that. And then we will have those additional pieces for that district level stuff to be able to submit. We don't want evidence, for example, Renee, on give us the results of your CNA. What it's going to be is show us that you did one. Did you do one? When did you do it? And what did you learn from it? That's the kind of evidence that I think is going to be important to be really clear on and provide those videos and those webinars and those links to say, this is what a strong would look like with a CNA. This is what a moderate would look like. This is what a limited would look like, or what you would need to do to get from a limited to a moderate for each of those, as example, like with this.
Okay, and I think examples are going to be really important for school districts to be able to understand. But like I said, I could flip through here and get to a regular with minor deviation, I think relatively easily. I think going beyond that would be, would require some years of work.
Yes. And so to get to regular is, I think, going to be easier than in our current system.
Thank you, Dr. Murdo. This is a lot clearer. You need a new microphone in your office. Even when it was good, it was only about every other word yesterday. As I go through this rubric and with your explanation, I see a school with very minimal effort should have no reason getting 3s on every one of those rubrics. And with not a whole lot of effort, should be able to be scoring 4s. So it does make a lot more sense this way here. Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion to get this on the table for.
We have one more board.
Okay. Dr. Slinger?
Thank you very much, sir. So I appreciate very much the explanation. Thank you. And I see that you're already incorporating percentages on page 172 under assignment and licensure of staff, percent, which I really appreciate, because I've heard loud and clear, you mentioned 200 schools that have one person or maybe 2 just out of their licensure. So I appreciate the use of percentages. And you did start to touch on, one of my concerns was the definitions of the limited, moderate, strong evidence. Those are pretty broad terms. And so how would those be defined? And what was the process of coming to that definition? Was that in collaboration with the school administrators to get their opinion, what they would feel comfortable in those levels, or is that coming down from OPI? I'm just curious as to how you are, and I'm sure on every criterion it's going to be a different definition of what that is, but how are you coming to those consensus on those type of descriptions?
So, Chair Tharp and Dr. Slinger, I think that's a really 2 critical pieces to say. Those terms came from the ESSA evidence-based research of what is evidence-based, strong, moderate, limited. So we didn't want to just come up with some random terminology, if you will. So it was mirrored after that system. What I would say is we want to this summer go in now and work with our school administrators, work with our partners and say, let's get some evidence and lay it out. What would be the difference between that so that we have a very clear and there's some consensus around this does meet strong, this doesn't, and why, so that we can provide some more clarity, if you will. And I said examples, because I think examples give folks some ideas as to what that might look like.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Back to you, Board Member Tharp for a motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the crux at which, as our friends from North Star are here, I was in Dutton Brady when we consolidated Dutton Brady, and that happened at the same time as Blue Sky KG consolidated, as did Chester and Joplin Inverness. And major changes, lots of anxiety and fear. Let us see exactly what it's going to look like before we approve anything. And we could only come up with frameworks, and we had to, and with a lot, begging for a lot of trust and faith that these are going to be tweaked as we go along. And as Dr. Murgo has shared, figuring out, clearly defining what moderate and strong, how do you tell the difference on something between a 3 and a 4? Working out those details is going to take some time, and we're going to have to trust that this process is going to take a little bit of time to flesh out, and it's not going to necessarily be perfect to start, but I think we all are in agreement, this is much better than what we had before, and we need to get something rolling. So I move to approve Superintendent Ardson's recommendation for the proposed accreditation process and schedule for FY 24.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Tharp and seconded by Board Member Headland that we approve the recommended process of the state superintendent. Is there any public comment? Rob, you can sit right there if you'd like.
You know, Superintendent Barron has a discipline hearing to go to, so maybe
Okay.
could you let
Want
her
to
go
do her
first?
first? Sure. Okay, Superintendent Lori Barron.
Hi, good morning. Thank you to the board, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you today. Thank you all for your public service and the work you're doing on behalf of all of us in schools. And I want to say first a big thank you to Cheryl Allen and Julie Merkel. They have worked very hard in this process. And I think as Dr. Tharp noted, we do need to improve the process. I don't think anyone is disagreeing there. And Cheryl Allen has particularly, she happens to be assigned to our Northwest Montana Association of School Superintendents group, Northwest Mass, and we meet twice a month. And she regularly virtually participates in those meetings and has been able to share information with us about this process along the way. And so feel very grateful for that. And Dr. Mergel has sat in on several of those and given us information as well. As a practitioner who will have to implement whatever it is that you vote upon, I guess my hope is that you'll hear some of our concerns. Again, we agree the process needs to be improved. That is not a debate. And much of the process that's being presented, I think, will be better over time. I think it will have higher accountability. It will have some clearer marks for us. While I have some sincere concerns about, for example, not having the proficient and growth percentages, they were in there initially, and we're grateful those were taken out because they felt very unrealistic and very harmful. We don't know what those are going to be, and that does feel unknown. And Dr. Tharp, I would agree. Some of that is you have to work it out as you go. We got to jump at some point, and I understand that. The two big concerns I continue to hear from my colleagues, I serve as the president of Northwest Mass, which encompasses one of the 9 regions of Mass, and Sanders, Lake, Lincoln, Flathead counties, portions of those. We continue to be concerned about how fast the process has gone. We were made aware in late March of feedback sessions that would take place approximately, and I don't have the number, maybe 10, let's say, online virtual feedback sessions that would take place. We were notified right before many school districts had spring break across the state. Many of our superintendents are small rural schools, so they don't even work over spring break. In our region, only, I think, maybe 4 of us were assigned to work over spring break. And several of the feedback sessions were over spring breaks. Our district attended the first feedback session. And we were the only district online. So we had a lot of personal attention, and we appreciated being able to ask a lot of questions and give a lot of recommendations, some of which we've seen come to fruition in the recommendation that's been brought to you today. And so we certainly appreciate that feedback. But that feedback session, we only got through maybe half of what's being proposed. And we had so many questions. And, this is something we're going to be held accountable to, which we should be. And we need to understand it clearly. And we only got through half the feedback session. My understanding is some feedback sessions got farther and different. We then signed in to do the last feedback session because we wanted to see were there changes that we were trying to stay responsible and be participatory in the process. And that feedback session had been moved, but we weren't aware. And there were probably, 10 to 15 of us from across the state on that session, but it didn't take place. It was rescheduled at a time that we weren't able to attend, and we never saw at that moment what the final was. We have since been given it. Again, Dr. Allen has done a great job of communicating and getting that information to us. But even in those feedback sessions, I don't think we ever had full opportunity to go through the entire document and, as a leader of a district, understand it. And so the superintendents and principals in our region that I've spoken with, and we meet regularly and are very active, are just extremely concerned about the very rushed timeline. We're not arguing the effort, the heart, the passion, the need, the knowledge, the experience coming from the leadership of Dr. Allen and Dr. Mergel. I have utmost respect for both of those ladies, and they have been so kind and open and helpful to us. We are concerned about the timeline. The second piece of that is, and one of the board members at the table, I apologize, I wasn't able to catch who was speaking, talked about the input. We also are really concerned about stakeholder input. Again, I know we heard some of our feedback come to fruition, so I cannot say that they're not listening to feedback. However, it felt so quick and so rushed, we haven't been able to give feedback on everything because it's such a comprehensive document. The two major concerns we have come from the rush timeline, and do we have sincere, legitimate, meaningful practitioner feedback from across Montana? And that is where our concern is. Again, we value and appreciate the work and leadership being done at OPI, but are there school teachers? Are there librarians? Are there principals? Are there superintendents from across all of Montana, rural, medium-sized, large, AA, one-room schoolhouse, K-8, from all different practitioner levels who will have to implement this document? Is that quality, meaningful stakeholder input there? Can we get there? Yes. Can more of it be offered once this is in place? Sure. But it feels like we should be offering it before it's in place as well. I just feel like some of the things are, I'm not afraid of change, and I'm not afraid of accountability. Dr. Allen will tell you, we have one of the most comprehensive school improvement plans there is, and we're very proud of it and are happy to upload it and share it and let it demonstrate the great work and progress and efforts we're making in the Evergreen School District. We do not worry about the accountability or the documentation. You need a CNA, I can give you one right now. That is not a concern for me. My concern is the stakeholder input and the timeline. The grad profile, oh my word, that's going to be huge. There are businesses vendors that are going to want tons of money to walk us through that. Who's going to do it? And again, hats off to Cheryl and Julie. They're working so hard, but OPI staff has decreased by so much. Where's the support going to come from? The day that I couldn't get on the webinar because it had been changed and many of us across the state didn't know, I couldn't get in touch with anybody. I called 4 different numbers at OPI. I sent emails, and later in the day, as she always does, Cheryl responded. She's very communicative, but she can't do it all for the whole department. OPI staffing has decreased by so much. Where's the support going to come in implementing this? And when your practitioners don't understand and we're going to have to implement it, that's my fear. And I am a very involved, active member of our association and in my district, and I feel like I stay very in touch and participate. And I am concerned and I'm confused. I worry about our leaders who are principals and superintendents and teaching a math class. Where are they going to find time to learn this when we've lost support due to a decrease in staffing? And another thing I want to address is a minor deviation is a big deal. I'm not going for a rubric with a minor deviation. It needs to be there because I need to be held accountable and our district needs to be held accountable. But our district for 10 consecutive years, to my knowledge, this is my 10th year as the superintendent in Evergreen, has had the highest accreditation with no deviations and no corrective action plan. I'm not looking to lead into saying it's okay to have a minor one because it's the first year. I want to be proud. I want to understand what you're asking so that I can make efforts to get there before it's just a minor deviation. And again, I'm not saying everybody's going to get 4s across the board, but I want the opportunity to understand what it takes to get a 4, because that's what we're going for in Evergreen, to be the very best we can be for our staff, our students, and our community. I don't want to go for minor deviation. I want to go for the very best, and I cannot do it if I do not understand it. So again, I thank Dr. Allen and Dr. Mergel for their time, their effort, their energy, their kindness, their professionalism, their leadership. I just feel like we need more time and more input. And I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Dr. Barron and Dr. Watson. You're next.
Thank you very much to the board. I know I took more time than I should have yesterday, so I will be brief today. I do think it's important to take a look at the timeline, the revised timeline. I guess I'd encourage you to take a look at, if you don't mind, I think it's page 161, 162, that's got the timeline that we looked at yesterday. 161. Okay. 160. It's 160. Take a look, please, at that little box, if you would, under spring. There's the 4 items, the CNA, the stakeholder engagement, graduate profile, educational goals. Underneath that, you'll see things like family engagement, professional development plan, IEFA plan, and general assurances. And I should have made this clear yesterday. This is the part that concerns me the most, because nothing that was presented to you this morning has changed in those requirements. And my concern, if I could be frank, is that we're not scaffolding enough for our schools. And what I mean by that is you were all likely teachers at one time. And what happens when you present a big project to a group of kids is you have to scaffold it. You know, we used to do senior projects at one of the high schools I worked at, and students would work on that all semester. And we would scaffold it throughout the semester to give them small due dates, give them smaller things to get done. And by the end, they had a finished product. That's my concern. We're not scaffolding enough for our schools. I want to speak briefly to the rubrics that were mentioned, because the rubrics are part of the assurance standards. So believe it or not, even though you're only approving a timeline, you're also approving the process of these rubrics. I'm concerned because the rubrics are just not finished. And I'm also concerned because it's going to take longer to get them finished. And it's going to require a lot of feedback. And anybody that's worked with a rubric understands that the most important part about a rubric is that the people that are being assessed understand what the different levels are, and they know how to achieve those different levels. And that's the piece we don't know. And we're willing to participate in that, but that's going to take some time. That's not going to be done by the fall. I also want to encourage you to think about training opportunities. We would never have these expectations or this rollout without a robust training opportunity. And we need more time to do that. We're talking about, as Superintendent Barron pointed out, lots of schools in lots of different situations. Sometimes they have turnover in leadership. Sometimes they're going through other turmoil. We need more time to make sure we can reach all those schools. And I am willing, as Sam, to participate in that process and help. But those training opportunities need to be focused, and they need to be short. And so we're not giving the whole enchilada, as my grandma used to say, in one setting. So that's really what I'm frustrated with, is that
We have the whole picture here, but there's no way to actually get it done. I don't say this often and I don't say this lightly. We are headed for a train wreck. And if we don't take some time and look at the process and determine what's actually could be accomplished next year, we're headed for a train wreck with our districts on this process. In my opinion, we only have one opportunity to roll out this process in a good way to make it meaningful for districts. If we don't do that, and if we don't offer the training and support, what's going to happen is that districts are going to get a sour taste in their mouth about this. They're going to do what they have to do to get by, and they're going to put it on the shelf. And I don't think anybody wants that. Dr. Slinger, I know you've probably been through accreditation processes with many of your positions. And in my opinion, accreditation processes are multi-year steps. Nothing happens in 1 year. Yes, you have to start making progress in the first year, but you're not required to have everything done in the first year. And I know that the OPI has told you that not everything has to be done in the first year, and I get that. My concern is let's not try to tackle everything in the first year. I'm just going to give you a good example of what could be done next year. The CNA, the Comprehensive Needs Assessment, is important. It's probably the first step in all of this. That's reasonable. We could actually do some trainings around the CNA. We could get them done this summer and in the fall. We could have the CNA in place for 100% of our districts next year. Now, what about Dr. Barron's district that already has it done? Perfect. She can help the districts around her that don't have it done because they're going to need help. So that gives her something to do as well. I don't think she is. Part of the CNA is stakeholder engagement and family engagement. So there you've got two other pieces that are already done next year, stakeholder engagement and family engagement. We can put those as part of the training when we talk about CNA. We can actually give the training for CNA early so that they can be working on it all year with that stakeholder engagement and family engagement. The other big piece that needs to be done next year because of House Bill 338 is the IEFA plan. I would encourage us to adopt an accreditation process that mirrors that House Bill 338, because districts are already going to be required next year to implement 338 and all of the reporting requirements under 338. So why not count that as their accreditation? That makes sense. You could kill two birds with one stone. We can accomplish the CNA, the stakeholder engagement, and the IEFA plan all next year with proper training. I would require districts under this alternative accreditation for next year. I would require districts to attend the trainings, and we can provide the trainings and make it easy for them. But we have other instances where we've implemented large scale changes and we have required trainings. So why not say we're going to have a different model next year? And one of the requirements is you have to attend that training, the CNA training. In the spring, you have to attend a graduate profile training so you can start working on that. All of this leads up to final accreditation in 3 years. The other thing I would do next year for those districts that are in deficiency status, which I agree, maybe there's 200 or 300 of them, ask yourselves how many of those are on a simple corrective action. They get a teacher licensed and properly placed. They're no longer in deficiency status. That cleans up a lot of them. For those schools that can't reach past deficiency next year, give them an alternative plan. Say you could show student growth next year. That would be a way to move off deficiency next year. There are no scores that, and it's clear, both what the OPI has shown you and what we've talked about, they're not using any student scores next year for any assurances. To me, student scores are a big piece of what we do. It shows achievement, but I understand why they're not using them next year. It's because we possibly are getting a waiver from the SBAC. So they said, we're not going to use any student scores next year. That's great. School districts are still using student scores, so we can use those next year. But what I would tell you is that next year is a perfect year, in my opinion, to take a pause and bite off the parts that we can bite off next year. Not asking districts to just get a free year to do nothing. You can say, we're going to hold you where you're at, or you could improve based on a couple of things that we put in place. But we're going to hold you where you're at, but you also have to participate in these few items and get them done next year. That's reasonable. You might ask, what do we do with the rubrics next year? we actually keep working on those rubrics. We work on them all year, so they're ready to go the following year. The following year, we implement the rubrics. To me, that is a slower process. That would allow districts not to have to look at that list and say, I have to have all of this due, or at least started in March. To me, that's too much. I understand it's a comprehensive process. Many of these things are interrelated to each other, but I would really encourage you to think about scaffolding for our districts. I told you yesterday, and I believe this, that the implementation of this, success of this implementation is important to OPI, but it's also really important to us as an organization, because we want to see this succeed. We want to be part of the solution to help with the success. But the way that it's structured, even the improved timeline that you saw today, in my opinion, we're still headed for a train wreck.
I suspect that OPI is chomping at the bit to be able to respond to some of the, first of all, is there any other public comment? And I do want to emphasize the board has several things we have to get through this morning, and we're going to lose some board members within an hour. So if we could keep comments short, we appreciate it.
One more public comment. Sorry. Jenny, go ahead.
Okay, hello. This is Jenny Murnan Butcher, for the record, MURNANE BUTCHER. I'm the Deputy Director of Montanans Organized for Education. And I will be brief. I just wanted to echo the comments of Dr. Barron and Dr. Watson. As an organization that represents parents, we are concerned that all of these changes happening at the same time might be challenging for parents to participate in. One thing that has not yet been mentioned that I wanted to highlight is that in the timeline that you are looking to approve, it includes elements of proficiency-based learning and personalized learning. And rubric H does on page 175 of your packet, does ask districts to have evidence of proficiency-based learning models. As a former teacher that's gone through that process, it took years to develop a proficiency-based learning model that was effective and evidence-based, and also to include parents in that process and make sure they really understood that. So I just wanted to highlight that that is another element that's going to take districts quite a bit of time, and teachers and parents quite a bit of time to understand. And I was just looking at the Teacher Learning Hub resource on OPI. There are currently no courses offered on proficiency-based learning. So as Dr. Watson pointed out, this is another element where training could be really helpful. And finally, I just wanted to emphasize what Dr. Barron said about practitioner feedback. I would encourage us to include parents and families, as well as teachers in the classroom, especially with the elimination of CISPAC. We want to make sure that those voices are heard as well in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butcher.
Amanda Curtis, MFPE, on behalf of Montana Public Employees, just a me too to everything that's been said, so we can be on the record.
Thank you. First of all, I want to re-emphasize that we are not, the board motion does not include the adoption of the piece in here that's called the accreditation status criteria reference guide. So that is a work in progress for the Office of Public Instruction. I think they've heard quite a few comments today that may help them as they go move forward with that. I would, I know we still need some board comments here, but I guess I would like to ask Dr. Tharp to clarify, is your understanding of the motion that you're making right now that we are actually working off the document that we were given this morning that includes on the second page the timing 1 through 3, talking about the 23-24 school year, 24-25, and then 25-26. Is when we talk about the motion on the floor is to approve the superintendent's recommendation, and I want to make sure that we are in fact talking about this version.
Correct. And with clarification, as you said, that it details the minutia of all of those processes. That's OPI's internal workings and how they do it. We don't micromanage that entire process. We set the big picture.
And I guess, in terms of my own board comments, I would ask that the Office of Public Instruction plan on joining us again in July and giving us an update on the various issues that have been raised about engaging stakeholders and education partners, and also the training plan as you might have it at that point in time. So that'd be helpful for us, and I think we can continue this conversation. So with that, other board member comments?
So, Madam Chair,
Board member.
so on the timing then, is the graduate profile, where does that fall on this? Because I don't see it listed. 1, 2, 3.
Dr. Allen, do you want to answer that?
Would be happy to. Chair Quinlan and Vice Chair Hedelman. So when you look under ISAP on the original, that had graduate profile, that had some of those other elements. I would note for you on the original, the other 4 items. So it's currently required for school districts to have a professional development plan that's directly tied to PIRs and that work and the input. So that's not new, and it's not something that's not already in play. So I think it's really important as you look at that a lot of those things are just bringing them to cohesion with how you're making progress on that bigger picture. It's not added work, and those things we're keenly aware of what is required in statute and what is not. So does that answer that? That's where that sits, is under the big category of the integrated strategic action plan, which, as we shared, is a 3-year process right now.
Other board comments or questions? Are you ready for a vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you for coming this morning. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody being here and their comments. And this is certainly a continued project.
So Chair Quinlan and members of the board, as Dr. Merkel and I have been in late night hour conversations, early morning hour conversations, weekend hour conversations with our staff. The intent already is to have a schedule that every single board meeting we want to get updates on processes and progress. So there's no time as we do subcommittee work. We'll request, as we have been with the board's accreditation subcommittee, to do updates with them, to do feedbacks. So there's no dark side, if you would. And so there's 2 things I need to recognize you on, Chair, before I've got to leave with Dr. Merkel here shortly. One is the separation of the annual data collection from accreditation was actually something you said to us many months ago. I don't know when those 2 got integrated. I wonder what it would look like if they weren't. So we took that to heart based on your experiences and your input. Out of the mouths of the former chief of staff was that element. The second thing I think it's really important for folks to understand in data modernization, one of the things that this project has been being tested already with districts and getting feedback. The state is moving to a data lakes, if you would. The data goes into a big lake. You have a dashboard that lets you pull out of that lake what you need. And so we're really cognizant, especially a small district, that sometimes it's going to be, here's the data, can you pull it for all the different reports? And that is one of the ambitious goals of the OPI, to get there with the support. And we'll keep you posted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Chair, may I be excused?
So, here we go. We're going to try to get through the next 2 items by 10 o'clock. So, Dr. Tharp,
We put out hard, we have to be upstairs at 10 a.m.
okay, so we are on item 16. Dr. Tharp, you want to take it from there?
Okay, it's a presentation on accreditation deviation and analysis report. Ellery, we've got your report in our packet, starting on page 209. Going to hit the high points.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Tharp and Madam Chair Quinlan and members of the board. Just the first page is going over the history, the second page in the report. We'll jump down to just, obviously you all know what was approved this year, which was, we're going to go back to the combination of assurance standards and using the assessment results. 5% of and we were restarting the consecutive years. So 5% of those the schools this year actually had an accreditation status that was better because of this this restarting the consecutive years. So if we jump down, the big one is going to be on page 211, the accreditation status for 2022, 2023. That's where Dr. Merkel was talking about. There's 250 schools that were in deficiency, 143 in advice, 3 schools were in regular minor deviation, and then 417 were in regular. So of those advice and deficiency schools adds up to 393. 79% were specifically due to educator licensing issues. 14% were due because a combination of both having non-proficient status in their student performance results and licensing issues. And then 7% were in advice or deficiency specifically due to their student performance results. So a big emphasis on the educator licensing this year is what we saw. If you jump down to page 212, the misassigned teachers, just keep in account that again, we were December 1st, 2022 was our cutoff. So some of these educators were licensed after that fact. So we had 132 schools out of 839 that had a misassigned teacher. That's about 16%. We had 172 misassigned teacher deviations as of December 1st. And then the next page is just the graph, so you can see the results. They are trending upward, as we can tell, which is likely due to educator shortage. If we jump down to 214, it's the misassigned teachers by content area. This was asked a couple years ago. And then we broke down the CTE specifically by content area within CTE for career and technical education. We saw some increases with the health, kind of increases across the board. You can see that there. If we jump down to page 216, that's the non-licensed teachers. Again, our cutoff was that December 1st. So some of these teachers were licensed after that deadline. We had 199 of 813 schoolers, or about 24% that were non-licensed, and then 3 of schools, and then 349 non-licensed teachers as of December 1st. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. And then the next page is just the trend. So you can see again, we're on an upward trend of those actual teachers. And then the following slide is the superintendent deviations. Huge asterisks on that 49. We had 12 superintendents that were not properly endorsed, serving 49 schools. So it is a jump, but it is based on the amount of schools that they were their superintendent for. Then we had the 12 that were insufficient FTE for superintendent and 7 that were non-licensed. Principal deviations, 13 not endorsed, 4 principals that were non-licensed, and then insufficient principal STEs at 2 schools. And library media specialist deviation. So we did see an increase here. We had 8 that library media specialists that were non-licensed. We had a jump here specifically. Library media specialists that were not endorsed went from 27 to that 36. And then 21 that had 21 schools that had no library media specialist, and 28 schools that had insufficient FTE for those library media specialists. And then our last slide on school counselors, another jump with the not endorsed. We had 14 counselors that were non-licensed, or schools that had non-licensed counselors, 30 schools that had counselors that were not properly endorsed, 19 schools that had no counselor FTE, and 21 schools that had insufficient counselor FTE. That was the end of that presentation. I will stand for any questions. I know I went through it fast, but I did hear you guys had to be out by 10, so.
Thank you, Ellery. Yeah, we've had, so any questions on this? Confirms everything we already knew. Moving on to item 17, addendum to accreditation status report for 3 schools. We have lots of information here to pour through, and assuming folks read it ahead of time, is there anything more to add, Ellery?
Nope, it just was data entry errors that we were just correcting that we didn't catch in the first round. So we're just trying to correct it now, and then we'll send those schools the updated certificates and reports. So
Here, I'm ready for a motion.
Back to you for a motion.
Move to approve the addendum for Sweetgrass County High School, Great Falls High School, and CMR High School.
Is there a second? A second. Okay, it's been moved by Board Member Tharp and seconded by Board Member Rasmussen that we take action, approve the addendums that have been presented to us for the 3 schools mentioned. Is there any public comments? Is there any board member comment? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Want to try to do the next item?
Yeah, item 18, action on 23-24 variance to standard applications. Starts on page 226 of your packet. Again, board members have this ahead of time. I'm always impressed with the amount of detail that the schools put into this, and it just, I mean, they truly have great plans and ideas as to how they're going to deal with those sort of deficiencies that we just heard a report on, and how they're going to find ways to make things work, with the focus being on their students. And so they've been doing this strategic planning. They've addressed their needs. They're getting stakeholder input on a lot of these things. And so I applaud these districts that have done this process. So Ellery, do you have anything to add on this initial variance for Hellgate?
Board Chair Tharp, Madam Chair Quinlan, no, I think you guys have all the information. They were our only initial. I do expect more in the October one. I think we'll see quite a few then, but I have nothing to add at this time.
Ready for a motion? Back to you.
I move to approve Superintendent Artson's recommendation to approve the initial application for a variance to standards for Hellgate Elementary Intermediate School.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved by Dr. Tharp and seconded by Board Member Slinger that we approve Superintendent Artson's recommendation for approve the variance to standards for Hellgate Elementary. Is there a public comment? Board member comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. Move on to the renewals.
See, so we've got move to approve Superintendent Artson for recommendation to approve renewal applications for the variances for Troy 7-8, Columbia Falls Junior High, St. Ignatius Middle School, Elysian Middle School, Big Fork Elementary, Big Fork 7-8, and Bozeman Online Charter.
Is that a motion? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Tharp and seconded by Board Member Hammond that we approve Superintendent Arnson's recommendations for the renewal applications for variance standards. Ellery, I want to give you a chance to do any presentation before I ask for public comment. Or anything you want to highlight for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I can highlight the board. Thank you, Madam Chair Quinlan. The board met, it went super well. We had all the members in attendance except for one person who could not make it. Hellgate was unable to attend, so we actually didn't get comment from them. So it was a pretty quick meeting just with the one initial, because they only review and approve initials. The renewals actually just go straight to the superintendent. So that's pretty much all I have to add.
Thank you. Where are we at? Is there any public comment? Any board member questions or comments? Boy. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed no. Motion carries. What do you think? Can we do the corrective action plans?
Item 19, Ellery, we have on our packet, starting on page 443, the presentation on accreditation corrective action plans.
Thank you, Chair Tharp, Madam Chair Quinlan, and members of the board. This is an information only item, just going over the corrective plans that we expect to see. They're actually due June 1st. So for some background, a corrective plan is a systematic procedure and timeline for the resolving the deviations from regular accreditation status. Corrective plans are outlined in 1055-605. This year we expect 316 corrective plans back. Right now we have about a third of those back, and we're working on outreach to make sure we get those by June 1st. And then in July 1st, or in the July meeting, we will bring those before you to get approved. So.
It's this information.
Oh, there you go. All right. Thank you. All right. It's amazing what we can do. Put the pedal to the metal. Is Dylan still with us? Dylan.
Hello, I am.
Get the last
Hi.
word. Like.
Thank you, Chair Quinlan. I'll be very brief. I won't keep you guys here long, and I appreciate the board's flexibility with me. We're sifting through the hundreds of bills that the legislature left us with at the very end there. So for my update, I just wanted to highlight a few of those bills that the governor looks forward to working with the Board of Public Ed on in the interim here. I think overall, it was a really great session for public education and for students and families in Montana. We worked to close some of those gaps in the Teach Act to ensure that provisional educators can take advantage of that. A bunch of these bills here were just signed by the governor this week, but it's exciting that teacher residencies got codified. I know that the Board of Public Education is going to have a big role with transformational learning and tightening up that definition of proficiency-based learning with Senate Bill 8. We doubled the amount of money available in advanced opportunities through House Bill 257, and then really expanded learning opportunities with the House Bill 203 and 214 related to open enrollment and virtual open enrollment. And then in addition to the, K-12 funding, there were some bills like Senate Bill 213 to expand school safety, and House Bill 338 to strengthen Indian education for all, and Senate Bill 70 to strengthen the Quality Educator Loan Assistance Program. So overall, the governor took action on a lot of, I think, really important bills this week for public education. And like I said, it expands the gamut from proficiency in work-based learning to supporting teachers to expanding options for students. So pretty exciting. The only other thing I wanted to say is I really appreciate the board chair and vice chair working with the Department of Labor and Industry and signing a letter of support for the teacher apprenticeship pilot that we're looking to start with the U.S. Department of Labor. I think the Board of Public Education and OPI and some of the other partners in the room, there are some of the members of the audience. I appreciate your support as well. I think that's an exciting opportunity as we look at just various ways to address the teacher shortage in Montana and get more folks engaged in that profession. And with that, with the legislative session being over, I know the governor is looking forward to getting back into some schools next school year. He was at Vaughn Elementary this week to sign the Huckleberry bill with students at Vaughn Elementary, and would certainly welcome any recommendations from board members if there's some innovative programs for him to visit this fall when the school year starts. So thank you, Madam Chair, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. Are there any questions for Dylan?
Just curious about any backlash the governor's office has over not codifying the flathead cherry.
Flathead cherry. We heard a lot about the flathead cherries, and some of us from eastern Montana thought maybe it should have been choke cherries, but there's other opportunities down the road.
Okay. Thank you. Any other pressing questions about the state fruit? Thank you so much, Dylan, and, we will be, our next meeting is in, July in Helena, and, encourage you all to attend. We'll be obviously following up on, especially on issues related to our new implementation of Chapter 55 and new accreditation work. And with that, I want to give one final shout out to Student Representative Charles Fox. We wish you the best. Gavin, we welcome you on board in your official capacity in July. So, and with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Oh, sorry. Is there any public comments?
I missed yesterday morning, so I appreciate you letting me say this, but, I forgot to say before you did Paul's evaluation, how much, of a treasure she has been to work with, how hard she works. I had an opportunity to travel with McCall across the state.
Or Rob.
And I can tell you that she works harder than anybody I've ever met, and she's very dedicated to your board and to the process. So I should have said that before her evaluation, but I didn't have time.
Great, thank you. We appreciate that.
Robin, I didn't turn the radio on once, and it is on.
Much I talked. Thank you. Nice note to end on. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Cool. All right.